Thanks a lot, Bowie. The bobblehead games are supposed to be the fun ones. This is your fault. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not your fault. I'm just frustrated and lashing out. I mean, ultimately, it's not like you play on the power play. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where I suppose the one piece of good news is that we get to eat our feelings tomorrow to feel better after this absolute mess of a game from the Kraken. Probably their worst loss of the season, and that's even remembering that they've been shut out 4 times so far, so yeah, it was ugly. And as far as why I'm wearing a jersey, ooh, I thought long and hard about not wearing a jersey for this one. Ultimately, I just decided that for the sake of the holiday spirit, I would get over it and wear it for this one. But with that being said, the Kraken certainly didn't earn any benefit of the doubt with the way they played in this game, or give us much of anything to be thankful about coming directly out of this game. I mean, we're still very thankful to have a team in Seattle, and we're thankful generally of how they've played recently. Things have been going pretty well, but this game was an absolute embarrassment on home ice right before the holiday. As the Kraken lose 5-2 to the Anaheim Ducks, and that's not even with any empty net goals, they actually let the Ducks score 5 times on them, and also let the Ducks get their pound of flesh from the last game without any sort of fight back of their own the other way. And just so we're all on the same page, I might take a slightly different approach to this one from usual. For one, it probably won't be quite as long. I want to have a good Thanksgiving, and thinking about this game anymore is going to make that harder. And I want you to have a good Thanksgiving, and quite frankly, watching a long video about this game will make that harder. So with that said, I appreciate you just clicking on the video in the first place. And for the Kraken, it wasn't all bad in this game. I mean, the outcome certainly makes it look that way. The Kraken still offensively, I think, did a lot of things well in this game. Transition game was maybe not their best, but still pretty decent. They were able to get into the offensive end, get set up, and create some good chances, moving the puck well in the offensive end fairly frequently in this game. There were large chunks of, especially early on in the first and most of the second period, where the Kraken kind of looked like they were on a power play at 5-on-5. The Ducks just are not a very good team. Sure, they are also NHL 500 now after this game, so maybe that says more about where the Kraken are after that horrible road trip and now throwing away this game to the Ducks. But yeah, this is not a team that played like the final score looks. Well, at least when it comes to the offensive side of the game. Really, for both teams, the Kraken certainly produced more than 2 goals worth of offense in this game. Just that Gibson stood on his head and bailed the Ducks out defensively pretty much the entire game. And the other way, I mean, the Ducks got their chances, though, as we'll get to, they were kind of handed those chances by the Kraken over and over and over and over again. They didn't get set up in the offensive end a whole lot in this game. They made everything happen either through transition or just horrible defense and turnovers by the Kraken in their own end of the ice. So I'm not in any way trying to get carried away here or suggest that the Kraken somehow deserved to win this game with the way they played. They absolutely did not. They earned this loss. Just that there were some good points for the Kraken offensively, and some silver linings might be nice going into the holiday with how the rest of the game went for the Kraken. Though even at that, I do have one pretty significant gripe with how the Kraken played offensively in the offensive end in this game, and it's something that they had done pretty well in the game in Anaheim just 2 days ago, and once again, it's completely disappeared in this game. That was their complete inability or non-willingness to get in front of the net and disrupt Gibson in any way whatsoever. So, I mean, it's one thing to get goalied, but then to also have the opportunity to see that Gibson was playing very well and on his game from the get-go. You had lots of chances in the first period and certainly a good chunk at the start of the second to see how well Gibson was playing, and then you just don't change your game plan, your approach, or make any kind of extra effort to get guys in front of Gibson to take his eyes away, make him make rebound chances or saves, or even just create chaos in front of him to try to distract him a little bit. The one thing the Kraken did do very well was keep him moving from side to side, back to front. A couple of passes, or quite a few passes actually, the Kraken had from behind the goal line out in front to guys in the slot that were open. The Ducks, not particularly great in their defensive end, but Gibson was able to respond with it, robbing a number of Kraken players in this game. Beniers in particular got absolutely robbed a couple of times. Stevenson got robbed. Gord, I think, had a pretty good chance in the slot. The chances were there for the Kraken through the Ducks defense. Just, yeah, pretty much any time Gibson had a chance to see the puck, he was going to make the stop, and the Kraken didn't make much of an effort to take away his eyes. Still, though, that certainly was not the biggest problem for the Kraken in this game, not the biggest reason they lost this game. No, that would be at least at 5-on-5 anyway, the back check, where the Kraken were an absolute unmitigated disaster all game long on the back check. Like I said, the Ducks really didn't get set up in the offensive end very often. They didn't have a ton of extended shifts in the offensive end, or at least not ones where they did much to keep the puck in. There was a few more extended shifts that they had that were just the Kraken handing the puck back to them at the blue line so they could keep it in. But the biggest problem was the transition for the Kraken back the other way, where the Ducks would get their rushes down the other end of the ice. This is a team with a lot of young, fast talent that will happily play a quick north and south game, which the Kraken generally have been pretty good at playing this season. But in this one, it was just a complete disorganized 5 chickens with their head cut off trying to meander back towards the other end, while the Ducks actually looked somewhat competent in their rush chances. And honestly, I think that disorganization on the back check, to say the very least, had a significant impact on that inability to get out of their own end of the ice when they did get possession in there with the turnovers at the blue line, or just at times complete ineptitude at getting a stick on the puck whatsoever, which is the case with the first goal the Ducks score, as right around the midpoint of the first period, Stevenson turns over a puck as he tries to fling it, backhand no look out across the blue line. It's intercepted by Troy Terry, and then he does have to work pretty hard to get it towards the net. It's kind of hack and whack time between he and a couple of Kraken players right down Main Street towards the net. Eventually, he's able to get a bit of a shot off. It goes off of someone. It was never going to go in. It didn't have much of a chance, but it does rebound back through another couple of Kraken sticks, gets to right in front of Vetrano, and then he just does a little 180 spinorama, flings the puck just inside the post and past Decord's toe to give the Ducks the 1-0 lead. Now, I suppose if we're going to be perfectly fair, it wasn't entirely incompetent defense here. After the turnover, which wasn't great, they do at least do a pretty good job of preventing Terry from getting the shot off from the slot. Even though he gets past a couple of Kraken players, they still are able to interrupt that, allow Decord to make an easy save, or at least disrupt it enough where the puck doesn't end up on net. Then at that point, you're already in desperation mode, and somehow none of the guys on the ice could find the puck. The Ducks do, and they get it in the net. The second goal, which comes a couple minutes later for the Ducks as they do take the 2-0 lead, this one, while it does come in transition, is actually defended pretty well on the back check by Tolvanen as he's able to get back and make this a contested shot from well out. And it has to be said that for everything Decord has done well this season, and I think will continue to do well, this is probably the worst goal that he's allowed this season. Actually, it's not probably. It certainly by a pretty healthy distance is the worst goal he's allowed this season. There's no excuse for it. It's one he absolutely needs to make a save on, especially at that point in the game. Your team is pushing. They're giving you some good offensive opportunities to get back the one goal that, let's be honest, your team didn't help very much at preventing. It's just one that can't get through him. It leaks through his armpit from well out, dribbles into the net, and it's 2-0 Ducks. And then nearly immediately after that, the Kraken get their first power play of the game, which, oh boy, if you thought this Kraken power play was going to come in to save the day after being down 2-0 halfway through the first, were you in for a nasty, nasty surprise in this game, as it very well may have been, certainly this season, but even going back to some other seasons where there are some pretty bad contenders, it may just be one of the worst special teams games in the entire history of the team. I mean, I suppose at the very least they didn't give up a shorthanded goal in this game, and as far as that's concerned, they really didn't give up any good shorthanded chances, but that's about the best you can say for the Kraken special teams in this game, and this does have something to do with the opponent they're up against, as the Ducks come into this game, even after making the Kraken go 0 for 3 on the power play in the previous game on Monday, still ranked 29th in the NHL on the penalty kill and 30th on the power play. And I'll give you one guess how that went in this game. Yep, the Kraken go 0 for 5 on the power play, totaling 0 for 8 in 2 games against the 29th ranked penalty kill. And then on the power play, the Ducks get 2 chances on the power play in this game and score on the first one. We'll get to that, though, as the Kraken, between now and then, as we're still getting through the end of the first period, are able to even things up, with the first one coming not long after that first failed power play in the first. It's a nice little rush play, kind of between shifts, I think, for the Kraken, as Tanev gets into the offensive end. He gets it to Gord down the slot. He isn't quite going to be able to get a good shot off, so instead he gets it out, or somehow comes out to Tolvanen on the far side. Tolvanen has some empty space, though. He winds up, fires off the shot, and puts it to the far side top corner. A perfectly placed shot to beat Gibson, which is pretty much what it took in this game, at least dividing the Ducks' lead in half, and the Kraken maintain that momentum through the first intermission into the start of the second, where they get another power play. And I mean, to be fair, the Kraken did at least get some chances on all of their power plays. The Ducks' penalty kill didn't necessarily look fantastic. Well, actually, I guess that's not entirely fair. The Ducks still, on the penalty kill, were able to fairly effectively make the blue line look like an insolvable puzzle for the Kraken transitioning into the offensive end on the power play. They just could not figure out how to get cleanly in with possession. And although they still got some offensive zone time on both power plays, kept the puck moving, got some shots off, it was nothing particularly dangerous, and they certainly weren't getting any kind of net front presence with the extra man to try to disrupt Gibson. Even still, though, back at 5-on-5, the Kraken got the better of the Ducks throughout the first half of the second period, and it did eventually lead to the game-tying goal. A very nice play on the forward check from Tolvanen, laying a hit, which allows the puck to get up along the boards to Wright, and Wright, quick thinking, fires a pass out into the far side of the slot where Bjorkstrand is waiting wide open, and he just fires off the one-time shot, again, perfectly placed to that blocker side of Gibson, just inside the post to tie things up for the Kraken. For Bjorkstrand, his 6th of the season, and Wright and that line, since Wright has come back, probably the best for the Kraken. I mean, it's been 2 games against the Ducks, so it's not a huge sample size or necessarily great defensive opponent, but that has been the line producing for the Kraken in these last 2 games. But of course, the excitement over this potential of a completed comeback, and maybe even the Kraken will go on to wrangle back another 2-goal deficit to win a game, well, all of that is short-lived, as not long after, actually just after they finish announcing the Bjorkstrand goal to tie the game to the arena, just about a minute after it goes in, the Ducks, off another turnover at the blue line, I think it was Gord turning this one over at the blue line, ends up right back down along the boards, down behind the net, where then it's passed by Zegras right out into the slot, where a wide open Killorn has an open shot. He fires it off. Evans realizes the incredible defensive blunder quick enough to at least make the screenshot of the goal look like it's a contested shot, but not quick enough to actually make it that contested, as Killorn puts it past Accord without much of anything Joey can do about it other than hope it hits him. It doesn't, and it's 3-2 Ducks as they take the lead right back, which just sucks. I mean, it does. It really sucks to, after all of that having gone well from pretty much the moment you went down 2-0, getting the power play that you don't score on, but you create some momentum out of it and carry that all the way through the middle part of the second period, come back, tie the game 2-2, and at this point, it really does feel, even after this goal goes in, the one that makes it 3-2 for the Ducks, it still felt like the Kraken were gonna find a way to score a couple more goals. They were getting so many good offensive opportunities, and the Ducks kind of just looked like a bit of a mess. But after this third goal goes in for the Ducks to retake the lead, worse yet is that it seems to completely kill the momentum and energy and fight from the Kraken. They just, I don't know, the energy just seems to completely disappear from the bench, or certainly at least on the ice anyway, throughout basically the entire rest of the second period, which does include at the end of it the first Ducks power play, which of course they end up scoring on. And if that third goal for the Ducks that retook the lead midway through the second didn't entirely kill the energy for the Kraken, this one certainly takes care of the rest. It certainly took a lot of energy out of the building, as it's a late second period goal that now means you're going into the third down 2 instead of 1. And that's without even mentioning that, once again, this is a Ducks team that came into this game with, on a whole, probably the worst special teams of any team in the NHL. They were, just as a reminder, 29th on the penalty kill and 30th on the power play. And yeah, the Kraken power play is pretty bad in its own right. Actually, after this game, I'm pretty sure they'll have swapped places with the Ducks, and now the Kraken get to be the 30th best power play in the NHL, and the Ducks 29th. Either way, you have now allowed the Ducks to go 2 for 2 in killing off your power plays, and 1 for 1 on their own power plays. So basically, the worst special teams team in the NHL is 3 for 3 against you, which is just, there's no other way to put it than embarrassing. Oh, and as for the goal itself, just to rub a little bit more salt into the wound, the Ducks do on this power play goal that one thing that offensively the Kraken failed to do all game long, which could be a big part of why they weren't able to score. And that is, the Ducks put a player right in front of Joey Decord so that he couldn't see the shot coming. What a concept. You got, even with the soft goal that he allowed on the second one of the best goaltenders in the NHL in Decord so far this season, and the Ducks put 2 and 2 together, took away his eyes, and just like that, wouldn't you know it, but Decord has to look one way to go around the screen, the puck goes the other, and it's 4-2. And then I suppose just to add to the challenge that was already going to be this third period, right away the Kraken send the Ducks to another power play. Fortunately, at least to add a little bit of reprieve to the completely inept Kraken special teams in this game, they do kill this one off. Gord actually even gets a shorthanded breakaway chance, which is saved by Gibson, of course. And then the Kraken, after killing off the power play, honestly, they had a decent third period. They did get a lot of chances. They were a little bit more off the rush rather than getting set up in the offensive end, at least until the later part of the game. But they did create a lot of chances. This is where Beniers gets absolutely robbed at least once, if not twice. The Kraken end up getting, well, 3 power plays at the end of the third period, but they get one still where there's a relatively decent chance, or if you score on that power play, then you're just down 1, and yeah, with the chances the Ducks are giving you, 1 goal does not seem like it's that big of a hurdle to tie things up with still 5-6 minutes left in the game if they were to have scored on that power play. Of course, as we know, they don't, since they go 0 for 5 on the power play in this game. And once that power play comes up empty, it does take a pretty big hit out of that feeling of a chance of a comeback happening here for the Kraken. But what makes it seem significantly less likely is then when right back the other way after the power play comes to an end for the Kraken, the Ducks make it 5-2. This one is entirely off of a just horribly botched mess of a back check from the Kraken, and a bit of a lucky bounce for the Ducks as well. They just allow the Ducks to basically walk them right up to the net. A shot on goal from, I want to say Killorn, but I could be mistaken. It hardly really matters. It goes off Tolvanen's skate, so Tolvanen gets the block there, bounces straight up in the air, comes straight back down, and into the lap of Zegras, who just drops it at his feet, takes it to the side of the net, and slides it in past Decord without really anyone even bothering to challenge him on his way to the side of the net. Decord doesn't pick up what's happening in time to get his toe to the post. 5-2 Ducks. So yeah, once that one goes in, it's basically over. Not even the Ducks are going to cack up a 3-goal lead, and about 6 minutes was left. And even with the Kraken getting 4 of those minutes on the power play, when not long after the puck hits the ice at center ice again following that goal for the Ducks, the Kraken are in the offensive end. Gibson freezes a shot on net, and chaos erupts in front of him as Cartier gets, there's some pushing and shoving that leads to it, but nothing terribly out of the ordinary. But then Cartier gets a hard back check in his back that he never sees coming. And I guess in some way I was a little bit surprised that it took as long as it did for the Ducks to go for their pound of flesh on Cartier, with Leo Carlsson not playing in this game and leaving the last one after that big hit that Cartier had on him. Again, a clean hit from Cartier, but a big hit that injured a player nonetheless. So this is where the Ducks decide to exact that pound of flesh, and instead of doing it in any kind of respectable, tough hockey, manly way, or whatever you want to call it, challenging him to a fight. Cartier is not one to turn down a fight usually. Instead, what they do is decide to go for the cowardly little man route of cross-checking him in the back where he has no chance of looking, and then while he's still down on the ice on a knee, a second player comes in, your biggest defenseman, an absolute goon who has no real purpose in the NHL apparently other than to occasionally exact this pound of flesh, comes in and starts wailing on Cartier over his back, just pounding his head not into the ice, but he was trying to pound it into the ice, clearly had just seen red, even at the point where 2 officials have to come in and separate them. It takes 2 guys to pull these 2 apart, and when I say pull them apart, basically pull Ross Johnston off of Cartier, who eventually, after all the dust settles, does get his sorry cowardly butt kicked out of the game, but he still was able to come in against a guy a couple inches shorter than him, who's on a knee on the ice with his back turned to him, and is already engaged with another one of your players. So yeah, 2-on-1 fight, outsized, not even with a chance to defend himself. Clearly, that's really the big man type of fight that you were looking for. Though I suppose it should hardly come as much of a surprise, as this is the same Ducks team the Kraken played on Monday, who, after that hit that Cartier had on Carlsson, sent 2 players after him there as well. So I guess the Ducks either don't understand how the fighting part of hockey works, or they just, aren't man enough to drop gloves and fight it out one-on-one. Heck, never mind one-on-one, they're clearly not even willing to fight a guy who has a chance to defend himself. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, for the Kraken part in all of this, and this is coming from someone who is pretty openly not the biggest fan of fighting in hockey, the Kraken could do a lot more to not seem like a soft, sorry team that you can just push around all that you want. The Ducks were doing that pretty well physically the entire game, massively out-hitting the Kraken, clearly trying to impose their will that way. And then when it comes to this whole fracas at the end of the game, and keep in mind, this is already coming a few minutes after Decord had gotten completely run out of his own crease, and that was a little bit more on accident. It's a Ducks player who loses an edge as he's circling in front of the net and just slides, taking out Decord's feet. Decord goes to the ice, and while it is an accident, you're trying to come back still in the game. This is while it's still 4-2, so you don't want to take a bad penalty there. You gotta find a way to defend the most important player on your team right now, which is clearly Joey Decord. Sure, he hasn't had the best game in this one to this point, but you gotta at least lay a big hit on the guy and let him know that you can't just run a goaltender, accidental or not, and get away with it. And then after all that has gone completely unpunished, you come back to this fracas at the end of the game where Cartier gets double teamed while he's basically hands and knees on the ice with no chance to defend himself, and the Kraken are, I don't know, picking dance partners to hug in a way that looks, ooh, like I'm gonna hug you and look at you mean, but yeah, there's really no real fight back from the Kraken. I suppose Shane Wright does come in and put a guy in a headlock that looked like it was kind of uncomfortable, but aside from that, the Kraken seem completely willing to just let other teams push them around and go after that pound of flesh if they want it, regardless of how they take it. Sure, personally, I'd love for all of that stuff to be left out of the game and we could just play hockey and maybe get some extra hard hits here and there like you see in football or something like that. But until they get rid of fighting, or whatever you want to call what this was in the NHL, which is not going to happen anytime soon, if ever, you have to have at least a couple players on your team who are willing to defend their teammates and answer the bell, or when the other team is, taking those cheap shots, go after them and take a couple cheap shots of your own. Well, okay, maybe that's taking it a little bit far. I don't actually want to see the Kraken answer cheap shots with cheap shots, but it would be nice to see a little bit more effort to come to the defense of your defenseless teammate who's getting punched over and over again by a coward all over his back. I mean, seriously, I don't even care what you have to do to make something change. Right now, this team is just soft, and other teams in the NHL are going to realize that, bully you up and down the ice, and even if you are to make the postseason, there is no way that with this being the state of things, when you are getting pushed around by another team, you're not making it through an entire playoff run. So yeah, I don't really care what you have to do, whether it's call up a guy like John Hayden, I don't know, get Bowie involved, he'll go after a couple guys, just tell them that they're all Paul Bissonnette skating around out there. He probably doesn't know the difference, and he'll get his licks in. All of that leads to a 4-minute power play, double minor power play for the Kraken. Like I said, 44 gets his sorry butt kicked out of the game for being a complete coward at 6'5", and punching a guy over his back. The Kraken aren't able to do anything on that power play. They do go 6-on-4. They pull Decord pretty quickly to start off this power play, and I suppose at the very least they don't allow a shorthanded goal on the empty net, but yeah, they can't even score at 6-on-5 with 2 extra guys against the worst penalty kill, one of the worst penalty kills in the NHL, which really tells you all you need to know about how completely lost this power play is right now. Though, to be perfectly fair, it has to be said that the only reason that they don't score on the 6-on-4 is that Gibson was playing absolutely out of his mind. He looked like 2 goaltenders in one, defending both sides of the net, absolutely stealing goal after goal during this power play. So yeah, you still have to find a way to score here if you're the Kraken, if for no other reason than just to get that one more and get something going on the power play to look back at later. But regardless, though, it still leads to that 5-2 final score of this game that is, and there's absolutely no way around it, in multiple different ways, a complete embarrassment for the Kraken on home ice the day before Thanksgiving. Embarrassing in all sorts of different ways. The special teams, the back check that looked like the worst of the inaugural season, the inability to get anybody in front of the net at any point in time against a team that's not very good in their own end of the ice. Yeah, a lot to be left to desire in this one. And if they want to avoid even further horribly embarrassing themselves following Thanksgiving with back-to-back games against the Sharks, they're going to have to get some things figured out, because this is a Sharks team that is not as bad as the one we remember from last year, which they still had at least one game that they threw away against. It's a team that will take advantage of you if you underestimate them. With that, though, I think we can close things out on this one and try to put it in the past, forget about it. Hopefully this is the wake-up call the Kraken need. They can win the 2 games against the Sharks and at least come away with 3 out of the 4 in this stretch of games that they really probably should have won all 4 of, but it is what it is now. Gotta look to the future and try to win the games the Kraken still have in front of them. As for Kraken 3 stars, there are no 3 stars in this one. Bjorkstrand, Wright, and Tolvanen all did play pretty well, but the rest of it was a complete mess, so yeah, I'm not going to give out any 3 stars for this one. Until next time, stay safe out there. Be good to each other. God bless. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, or just share some happy thoughts about how your Thanksgiving is going. I hope it's a good one. And until those games against the Sharks, go Kraken.